So, Vasula, it's nice to be able to have this conversation about what's going on with the migration crisis in Europe. You just happened to be there last year because you live on Lesbos, coincidentally, when this enormous influx of people started arriving. So I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about why Lesbos has become such a critical place. And I ask this because for the FXB Centre, you've written this marvellous report, which we're releasing, describing the history and the background. But it's good to know a little bit now about why this is such a crucial spot.
Well, this is a very interesting question. Well, Lesbos is a unique point for many reasons, and I think the most important is its geomorphology and its proximity to Turkey. Just to give you an idea, the closest point between Lesbos and Turkey measures approximately 6 miles, and it's a distance that can be easily covered by boat within 2 or 3 hours under favorable conditions. Also, Lesbos coastline stretches 200 miles, 80 of which face Turkey, and it offers very easy access because it's a smooth terrain.
So it's close and it's
easily accessible. So for that reason, it's an obvious crossing point, particularly as crossing the broader Mediterranean has been so dangerous for people. Exactly, and also the size of coastline makes it very difficult for people to patrol, for Coast Guard to patrol, and also very difficult to intercept all those people who try to reach the shores.
So give us a sense of the scale. First of all, how many people normally live on Lesbos, and how many people over this recent crisis have arrived?
So I will start back to 2014 when we had illegal immigrants trying to reach Greece through the islands of northern Aegean Sea. But the numbers hard compared to what happened in 2015. Based on the Hellenic police data, not more than 7,000 people arrived in Greece in 2014. But in the beginning of 2015, the new government announced a new open border policy and made Lesbos the main and maybe the most safest point from people to arrive.
So normally, before there were refugees arriving from the Middle East, from the Syrian conflict and so on, how many people normally live in Lesbos?
So in Lesbos, we have a population of 86,000 people.
That's the normal residents.
Normal residents. But imagine that within 2015, 1 million people arrived, refugees and immigrants arrived from Turkey to Greece, 60% of whom arrived through Lesbos.
So what you're saying is that this was a government policy to actually make Lesbos the point of access. It was partly a humanitarian gesture to say that Greece wants to help, and then partly strategic to say this is the best place to arrive.
Well, actually, when the new government announced that we have open borders and we don't have maritime borders, and people tried to cross to Europe to have to find a better life, it was easier for them to find an easy accessible place. And Lesbos was the closest point from all the islands in the Aegean Sea.
So that's why we keep on reading about Lesbos when we read these terrifying stories. So just think back to this last summer of 2015, when you were there. You just finished your PhD and you were in Lesbos. Give us some sense of what it was like, because I know you and your family were very involved in the humanitarian operation, and I gather many people on the island just got really involved in helping refugees. So give us some sense of both, some of the most sort of kind of moving things you saw, but also what you did on a daily basis. What were the sorts of things that you think the refugees needed?
So during the summer, when we realized that more and more people were arriving at the shores and the island was not prepared, well, not only the island, but whole Greece was not prepared to receive such a bulk number of people, it was very difficult for the locals to respond. We had a daily arrivals rate averaging 3,000 to 4,000. It was a big number, and we didn't have the proper infrastructure on the island to help these people. We didn't have proper housing, we didn't have sanitation facilities, health care. So what happened was a lot of the local people and the tourists who were in Lesbos tried to help in any way they could. We were waiting for the boats to arrive, providing people with food, with dry clothes, because we knew that they had to walk approximately 30 miles to arrive to the camps.
So they arrive at the coast, and then they'd have to walk for 30 miles to get to what these are temporary tents that were provided by the international community, or?
So when this crisis started, the mayor of the city of Mytilene created two camps, one which is called Karatepen, the other one which is called Moria. But these camps could host no more than 1,500 people. And when you receive 4,000 every day, and with a registration process that delayed the departure of these people to Athens for more than 10 days, you can understand that within few days we had more than 10,000 people on the island. So these people didn't have place to stay. Imagine that for many months we had people lying on the road, facing the risk to be hit by the traffic, because we didn't have any tents, we didn't have any place. A lot of people also were sleeping inside the port, the main port of Mytilene, because the registration point was inside the main port. So people wanted to be close, thinking that, okay, if we receive our papers faster, we'll be able to depart faster to Athens.
So most people presumably were then thinking of going on elsewhere in Europe. They weren't going to, because Greece had just emerged from this terrible crisis, and so most people were heading north, right?
Yes.
So heading towards the border. So, but they need to be registered first. They needed to prove that they had arrived. They made a claim for asylum, I presume.
Yes.
And then they could travel on. So, just tell me a little bit specifically. Obviously, your report and our centre focus very much on children and the particular harms that affect children when they're in sort of caught up in this distress migration. So, what were some of the issues that particularly struck you as being child-specific? And how well or poorly do you think the authorities dealt with them?
So that was one of the points that struck me the most. The number of children and babies who were making this journey along with their families, or even alone, because we had a lot of number of unaccompanied children, or children who ended up alone because they lost their families. So it was devastating seeing all these children inside overcrowded boats, especially when they had to travel during the night, and especially when the weather conditions were not good. And then you could see all these children walking barefoot for maybe 30 or 40 miles to reach the camps. They were sleeping on the ground, or they didn't have the proper nutrition or even clothing. So many of the volunteers tried to help, especially the local people, by giving food, by offering clothes, or sometimes we had families that they opened their houses to offer a shelter for a few days to these families, mostly families. But unfortunately, the Greek government, along with Europe, were not able to assist, and especially the most vulnerable population, who was the children. And right now, they try to assist the unaccompanied children, but because of the big number of children, they are not able to do this. And now, because of the new EU-Turkey deal, and the changing of the camps into detention centers, we have many children, unaccompanied children, who are detained behind bars.
So this is a very concerning development from the perspective of international law and human rights. Children, like anyone, have the right to claim asylum if they're fleeing persecution, and the situation in Syria, I think, is familiar to everybody. But what you're saying is now, because of this new deal between the European Union and Turkey, that people have to go back and then apply and be resettled from Turkey, that children are, as well as adults, being detained forcibly for, and this lasts for how long? I mean, how long are they detained? Is it till they're removed somewhere else, till they're sent back, or till they get their registration, or what happens?
So yes, there is a huge delay because of the registration process. At this point, at least in Lesbos, we have 3,000 people detained inside the detention centers. And unfortunately, we have to put the children behind bars because this is the only way to secure the safety. Otherwise, they have to share the same place with adults. So this is the only way to keep them safe. And this registration process takes a lot of time, and for this reason, a lot of people say that children are detained for more than 30 days.
This is so. This is one of the main human rights violations, I think, that people are drawing attention to, because as a fundamental matter of international law and children's law, you're not meant to detain people for their protection. You know, you're meant to find some other alternative. But in this situation, children are being held, you know, as if they have committed some wrong, which is very concerning. So just to look forward, you're going to Greece tonight to do some more research. What are the main things you're going to look at, and what do you think are the main policy issues that we should be thinking about as we try to make demands for a more ethical and supportive treatment for these people? So those two questions really. What are you looking for, and what do you think the main sort of policy issues really are?
Well, we're trying to assess the key factors regarding child protection. So I will try to research the adherence to international laws regarding the treatment of children, the places where they stay, the conditions under which they stay, or the resources that are given to them, trying to identify the risks in an effort to inform future policies on children on the move. And knowing that many of the child protection policies have been violated, not on purpose, but still having so many children in Lesbos. Also, we believe that we have like 4,000 children strained in Idomeni also, and in different camps all over Greece.
So Idomeni is the camp in the north.
Idomeni is the camp
where people are trying to get into Macedonia but are blocked.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many children all over the country.
4,000
there, and another 3,000 or so, 3,000 detainees, including children in Lesbos.
Yes, and other main camps all over mainland Greece. So we try to find out all the risks that these children face and the successes and failures of the Greek government in order to protect these children.
Great, well that's helpful. So this will really feed in, just to sum up, to the reports that we're doing at the FXB Centre on Children on the Move on what the legal protection should be, and in particular some of these very critical hotspots like Lesbos. So it'll be fascinating to see what you find now and how it adds to the wonderful work that you did for your report. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.